Thanks for tuning in once again to NFL coverage on the Our Lads Football Network as we talk New England Patriots football on Pat's Probe with Evan Lazar of CLNSmedia.com. Following the Patriots' oh-so-close loss to the Tampa Bay Bucks, they almost did it.
Evan. They almost did it.
Almost did it. And you got the feeling when it was raining that was the first sign that, maybe, there's a little bit of, because we always talk about whenever you're the underdog, you always want weather. Weather's always a good thing when you're the underdog.
Right.
Especially when you got a 40-plus-year-old quarterback that doesn't want to get hit and has to deal with the rain and the elements. And that was the first good sign. But the game plan was the typical Bill Belichick thing of beauty.
It was. And as a Patriots fan, I think you have to come away with two big picture points. And right now, what we're feeling and seeing in Boston, Greg, is typical Boston. They're 1-3. At the end of the day, they're 1-3. And that, for people around here, people don't do moral victories in New England, right? So the fact that they looked better on both sides of the football, the fact that their defense, which was touted as a pretty good defense coming into the season, really stood up to Tom Brady and played a great game for basically 4 quarters.
Without their best corner.
Yeah, without their best corner. True. You give up 19 points to Tom Brady, you expect to win that game. So the defense did its job. And really in 3 out of the 4 games that they've played, besides maybe, I suppose, against New Orleans, the defense has more or less done its job on the whole. So the defense has been good. And on Sunday night, they were fantastic. And if you look at this as a Patriots fan, I think there are a lot of fans, maybe more from a personnel perspective than an actual X's and O's perspective, that we're starting to think, has Belichick lost his fastball a little bit, right? Is he still the same coach? Is this coaching as much of a factor as we thought it was? Or was the last 20 years just Tom Brady being the greatest quarterback of all time and any coach could have won, had that kind of success? And you hear a lot of people picking Brady, obviously, for obvious reasons. On Sunday night, that game plan was a masterclass of mixing up coverage, mixing up pressure, showing pressure, and then backing off on pressure, knowing where Brady's hot spots were going to be on the field and taking those things away, the middle of the field routes, the in breakers, the crossers, those types of things. Belichick was in his head. He knew exactly where Brady was going to want to go with the football. He knew exactly where to defend, which areas of the field to give him and allow him to attack. And then late in the game, I have never seen Tom Brady take 2 shots at the end zone.
Oh, yeah, but the back-to-back,
like he did there. Because Brady with Belichick, and this isn't an indictment on Brady with the Bucs. He's won a Super Bowl there. They're off to a great start again. Brady with Belichick picks up the first down, runs the clock down to 3 seconds, and kicks a 28-yard field goal to win the game as time is expiring and never gives you the ball back. He got greedy. So Belichick played into it perfectly. He knew that Tom was going to want to put on a show. He knew that they were going to want to throw the football. He knew where they were going to want to throw the football, and they had a fantastic game plan. And if you're a Patriots fan, watching Bill Belichick deliver that type of plan against Brady and getting his defense to buy into it and execute it at an extremely high level goes to show that the old coach is not washed just yet. And that is something that you have to find some solace in.
And it's interesting you mentioned that play because it was almost like Brady realized, well, you know what? If I just put a little bit more on the throw, I've got him. And especially with the DB not being 100%, and sure enough, he put it perfectly this time.
Yeah.
And Brown just didn't come down with it. But statistically speaking, like you were saying, that's not the way Belichick plays football. You don't go for it when you don't have to go for it. Because the stats aren't on your side. The percentages are lower, and that's why. It's not easy. You can make the best pass in the world, but you also have to catch it.
Right. They didn't need it.
They
didn't
didn't
need the
need it.
touchdown.
Yes.
And if that was Brady in the Patriots, then Bill is getting the first down and he's having Brady center the field goal
Yeah.
unit, and they're marching Nick Folk or Steven Gostkowski or Adam Vinatieri or whoever you want to call it out there with 3 seconds left to kick a chip shot field goal to win the game, and the other team is just sitting there with Patrick Mahomes on the bench or whoever it is being like, damn,
Yeah.
they got us again. And Brady got a little bit greedy, and Belichick drew up a great game plan on the offensive side of the football. Not good enough by any stretch of the imagination to only score 17 points against a depleted secondary, but it felt like they found some things that worked for them offensively with the short and the intermediate passing game, and they were able to get into some of the personnel groupings, the formations, just the general feel and the style of the offense that they were playing on Sunday night from a passing game perspective. That feels like where they need to be all year long. That's kind of going to be their offense, is Mac Jones in the shotgun in a spread type of formation with a bunch of receivers on the field and just dinking and dunking his way down the field. And now, as I wrote in my film review today, now it's on Mac to master it. Right now, he is going to have to be just like Brady was at times here. And that's another thing you can find solace in as a Patriots fan. The Patriots have won like this before offensively without having a true deep passing threat, right? Without really having that outside over the top element of their offense. 2011, that offense was like that. Really, the Welker, post Moss Welker years were mostly that. And a lot of the Gronk Edelman years were like that as well, where they were more of an in the middle of the field, short, quick, intermediate, yak all over the place type of passing game. And that's going to be what this offense is going to have to be. But in order for that to happen, then Mac Jones has to be 10 steps ahead mentally. Sure. He has to really dominate the mental aspect of the game for them to be a good offense playing that kind of style.
Well, and this is the reason why we felt all along that Jones was a perfect fit. And it started to show as we take a look now at your film review. And really the thing that you zeroed in on was the fact that things continue to go well for Mac Jones early on in his career. Passes 0 to 19 yards, 76% completion percentage. But when you get 20 over, his completion percentage drops to 23%. That has to improve, because it doesn't, then it makes you just a one-trick pony, and then obviously it makes things a lot easier on the defense.
Right. So I think there's a couple of things that are important to look at when you're talking about this. The first thing is that those numbers on passes of 20 plus yards, it's clearly not all on Mac Jones that they're not hitting on the big plays. From a personnel perspective, wide receiver wise, Nelson Aguilar is the only guy that's going to be able to take the top off the defense. So every single team that they go up against every single week knows the only deep threat they have to worry about on the team is Nelson Aguilar. So they're one-dimensional there. Their offensive line's not protecting long enough to give Mac those opportunities down the field. So there's a lot of factors at play here as to why Mac has not been efficient throwing the ball down the field. But he's been very efficient in Josh McDaniels' quick game concepts and the intermediate throws. Those throws have been more of his bread and butter. And again, the Patriots have won games like this. They've won games for years like this, where you just hit the top of the drop and get the ball out. That play right there is a classic snag concept, right? You have the running back in the flat, you have the tight end on the snag route, the linebacker goes with the running back clearing the window, ball's out. Hit the top of the drop, get it to Hunter Henry, ball's out. That's going to be their first down offense. That's how they're going to get 6, 7, 8 yards on first down. This play, spread the field out, come in condensed over the ball route. Those linebackers open up. You see the open receiver, get it out, get it to him, hit the play, keep the thing running. The next throw, intermediate shot, deep dig route to Kendrick Bourne. In his drop, look down the left side, get the linebackers out of the passing lanes, get it back over to the right side to the dig route. That's a nice 17-yard completion.
By the way, I want to show this one more time because we talked about this. Look at what Matt Jones does here to avoid the rush. Yes, and we talked about that last week. He's got to do a much better job of that, and he did a phenomenal job of that on Sunday night.
Yeah, and so this is another big issue that they're having. It's actually going to play from the end zone angle. Damien Harris, number 37 in the backfield, is going to blow this blitz pickup. See how he goes over the wrong guy. Yeah. So he blows the blitz pickup, which is a big problem the Patriots are having. These are the reasons why when people say, "Oh, Mac only has 4 completions of over 20 yards," he has an 11.8 passer rating on throws of 20+ yards, which means that if he just threw the ball away on every play instead of throwing the ball to a receiver, he'd have a higher passer rating on those throws. So that tells you everything that you need to know about how this is going so far, throwing the ball down the field. Now, this play is a really good one because this is going to be a little bit more of a downfield throw. But what they're doing is they're being able to
You there, Evan? We'll get him back.
Fine.
Oh, we lost you there a second. Go ahead. Go ahead and start with that play again.
The back shoulder.
Yeah, we lost you there.
Yeah. No. Go scroll down to the next one.
Oh, the next one. Okay. This one here?
Yeah. Okay. So this is So this is a little bit more of the downfield element that you're seeing from the Patriots. So instead of asking Mac to throw the ball 60 yards down the field, they're taking these 25 to 30 yard shots at a time instead. So he's going to get the back shoulder fade here to Jacoby Myers. Great release the line by Myers on Richard Sherman. He gets open. The safety stays over the top of the tight end, and he's able to make this throw. So the Patriots are operating in a 25 to 30 yard window. And you look at these stats here by time to throw as well. When Mac is getting the ball out of his hands quickly, you're seeing a much bigger difference than when they're forcing him to hold the ball in the pocket. And the number one thing that you look at there is the turnover-worthy plays. So turnover-worthy plays accounts for dropped interceptions, fumbles that are recovered by the offense, just times where the quarterback is putting the ball at risk. And you see 0 when he's getting the ball out quickly, and all five of his turnover-worthy plays right now on the season are when he's forced to hold the football in the pocket. So when he's getting the ball out quickly, when he's getting to his receivers fast, and he's seeing the defense in the rotation quickly, and just getting the ball out in under 2.5 seconds, that's pretty good. Obviously, you'd like the yards per attempt to improve, but in terms of the efficiency stats, the completion percentage, things like that's what you're really seeing. And then in this chart, you get into the pressure, right? And every quarterback is worse under pressure than when he's kept clean. But Mac Jones, what this chart shows is that Mac is an above average passer when he's kept clean and a below average passer league average wise when he's under pressure. So when the Patriots are able to protect him, he's been in the upper echelon of quarterbacks in the NFL, but they're running into so many protection problems. And part of that's Mac holding the ball. Part of that's his pocket movement at times, but 99% of it's the blocking. And when you look at all of that, you see right there, kept clean, they're going to be good, right? They're going to be fine. When he's under pressure, they're getting themselves into trouble like with most rookie quarterbacks.
So this says pressured and clean grade. So how do you differentiate both here on the chart?
So you have
which is the pressured and which is the clean grade?
So pressure is on the y-axis and clean is on the x, right? So you have pressure is up and down and y is across. If people, or kept clean is across, right? If you want to look at it that way. So the lines that you see, the red lines that you see, those are league average barometers. So that's how you can get a feel for where league average is. So Mac, if you look at it, he's in the positive quadrant for kept clean, but he's in the negative quadrant for under pressure. So obviously the pressure is affecting him a little bit. It's not a big discrepancy, but it's enough that that's causing them some problems. So if they can keep him cleaner, then maybe the point that I was trying to make by showing this chart, if you can keep him cleaner, then maybe the downfield throws will come a little bit more, and maybe he'll be able to he'll hit the downfield throws a little bit more. But in order to hide this offensive line, the best way is definitely to just get the ball out as quickly as possible.
Because if you look at the other rookies here, they're having a much tougher time. Fields, Lawrence, Mills more, of course, more expected, but even Fields we've seen what happens when he has to run around, and sometimes he can run around, and as long as he's using his feet instead of his arm, he'll be all right. But Trevor Lawrence is definitely having more of an issue. Zach seems to be pretty close to what Mac's doing.
Yeah. So rookie quarterbacks are obviously more susceptible to being worse under pressure. A big reason why Mac at Alabama, Zach Wilson at BYU, Justin Fields at Ohio State, three things that they all had in common. They were never under pressure at the college level. Yeah. They had good schemes. They had good protection. They were very kept clean a lot. So that was a big reason why pressure, once you get to the NFL, A, it's moving faster, but B, it's also just happening more often than what you get at the college level. So adjusting to pressure is always a big thing for rookies.
And by the way, that's the reason why I never thought Haskins had a shot in the NFL, because unlike Fields and even a few others that I've seen, he had no mobility. And you couldn't measure him because he had the clean pocket. It was just completely, if you wanted to draft him in the third round or the fourth round, fine, that's where he'd belong. But he never belonged in the first round. And frankly, I'm even shocked he's even on an NFL roster, because he's terrible.
Yeah. So that's a big problem for college quarterbacks, because kept clean grade for the most part is more stable year to year. If you're trying to predict the quarterbacks that are going to be good year in and year out, guys that grade extremely well from clean pockets typically are those guys, because on average, a quarterback in the NFL is under pressure about 30 to 35% of the time. So the clean grade's more important, because you're talking about 70 to 75% of the dropbacks are when he's kept clean. So guys that are very, very good without pressure tend to stably be good every single year.
That's why last year, Pro Football Focus had this stat with Sam Darnold. I was talking on the Jet show, because all the Jet fans want to talk about is, Sam Darnold never gets any help. He never gets any protection. Well, Pro Football Focus had this stat that showed you how bad Darnold was that week when he had no pressure.
Right.
And so I wanted to let the fans understand that okay, well, this is what happens when he's not under pressure. He's still not playing well. So that's why it is important that, like you said, if you can't play well when you're not under pressure, then you have a long way to go.
Yeah. So Mac's been good not under pressure. He's been above the average for a rookie when he is under pressure. So he's been good, right? He's been solid. They have to work on some things now of executing and really cutting down on some of the mistakes. So here's some of the bad plays, if you want to call them that I pointed out. So this one's really cool, because can you pause it for 1 second? So they get single high, right? So you have that single high safety up top. So they actually start under center, and Mac is going to get an option here. He's going to have two plays called. He's going to have a pass play, and he's going to have a run play. If they get too high and they have the numbers in the box, they're just going to run the football. And if he gets single high and the defense is loading the box, then he's going to audible out of it and throw the football. So he gets the single high safety here, and he actually calls Jordan. If you listen to the broadcast, he's going to say Jordan, which stands for Michael Jordan, because he's running Hossie Juke, which is the GOAT play. So that's why they get to Michael Jordan, and they call it, for their one-word association for this type of situation, they're going to call Haas Jordan. So they get into Haas here. He spreads the field. He goes 5 wide. He goes from inside to outside. And I love that, because this really plays with the defense. But what ends up happening is, if you look at the top of the screen, and really the whole thing with Haas is it's an all-purpose play, and it really gives you options. If you pause it once he gets into the shotgun formation, I can show you what happens here. What the great part about Haas is that it gives you an option against every type of coverage. It's an all-purpose route combination. But when he gets single high, he decides to work number 3 in the option route, Jacoby Myers inside. Against single high, that's not the right way to read this play out. So when you get the single high safety, whether it's cover 1 man or it's cover 3, you almost always work the hitch seam combination on the outside. Because if it's man to man, you're going to have a seam fade, right? A slot fade against single high man to man. The safety is not going to be a factor, and you're going to be able to drop that throw in the bucket. Okay. If it's cover 3, you're either going to have the seam route splitting the 2 deep third defenders, Or if those guys back off, then you're just going to be able to throw the hitch quickly on the outside and take the easy throw. So at the top of the screen, Nelson Aguilar is in the slot. Damien Harris is out wide on the hitch. And that slot defender for Tampa Bay inside over Nelson Aguilar is going to widen out to the flat.
This guy here, 43?
Yes, okay. Exactly. Ross Cockrell. He's going to drop into the flat and take his flat assignment, and the defense is going to drop into cover 3. And if you roll it now, you're going to see, watch how open Nelson Aguilar is here because of what happens to the defense. See, he's wide open up the seam. So this is
that could have been a touchdown.
Yeah, if he hits him in stride and he's able to make a guy miss, then you never know how far that play goes. So those are the types of reads. And Mac ends up going to number 3 with both linebackers bracketing Jakobi Meyers inside. He's not open. So you have those 2 linebackers over the middle on the Patriots logo right now. They're inside outing Jakobi Meyers. So he's covered. So there's no reason to go to that the option route here. He should be working the outside route combination. And that's a read that the Patriots can't afford Mac to miss because they don't have the big plays to make up for it. So they're not going to, okay, so he misses a read here. So what? When Patrick Mahomes misses a read like that, and this is a play against the Giants in the preseason where he throws the seam against cover 3 and for a touchdown in the preseason. Same exact route combination, same throw. So he's made the throw before, and he's read it out correctly before. He just didn't read it out correctly there. And those are the types of plays the Patriots just can't afford to miss. And because he's only going to get 4 or 5 of them a game where a receiver is that open. And Patrick Mahomes can miss that read and then come back the next play and hit Tyreek Hill for a 60-yard touchdown. The Patriots don't have that luxury. So,
and it was interesting because it was obvious that 43 for Tampa Bay completely blew the assignment. I mean, why on earth did he take the Damien Harris on that play?
Right. So if he doesn't go out to the flat, then Damien Harris is going to be open on the hitch because the slot defender is hanging inside. Yeah. So that's how you read that out, is where does that slot defender go? Does he take the flat or does he stay over the top of the seam route? If he stays over the top of the seam, you throw the hitch. If he takes the flat, you throw the seam. It's that simple of a read. And Mac just, for some reason, he didn't read it out properly. That only he can really answer.
Was Aguilar the number 1 guy on that read in the beginning?
He should be, based off the single high. And also, if you go back to the play, if you look at the outside corners are pointed inward towards the quarterback. So see these outside corners, Sherman, and I think it's the next play down. Oh, no, you're right. See how Sherman and the outside corner at the top of the screen, I don't know if it was Carlton Davis at this point or what, but those corners are pointing inwards, right? Their eyes are in the backfield. Cover 3 indicator. That's not man-to-man. If it's man-to-man, the corners are going to be squared up on the line of scrimmage, and they're going to be playing squared up on the receiver.
And that's something a veteran quarterback or any quarterback learning should know.
Right. So you have post safety and you have the corners pointing inward, which means 110% you're getting zone. You're getting cover 3 zone here, and Mac just doesn't see it correctly. And again, it comes back to he needs to be perfect mentally so that they can hit these plays, because they're not going to get 10 of these opportunities a game to hit Nelson Aguilar up the seam. They're probably only going to get 3 or 4. So if he's missing those 3 or 4 opportunities, and the Patriots are in trouble. So this play is another pre-snap indicator type of play that he gets pressure. He's going to get this stunt from Tyrone, and he's going to kill him in the pocket for a sack. But if you look at the bottom of the screen, what you're getting is a bunch formation here. And the defense, very clearly based off the pre-snap read, is playing this with lock and level rules, which means that the 3 guys that are the primary man coverage defenders are locked onto their assignments, and they're playing man coverage here. The level part of it comes, see how the corners are staggered?
Yep.
So they're staggered. One guy's up on the line of scrimmage, one guy's a little bit off, and then Richard Sherman's all the way off. That way there, because teams out of bunch formations, they love pick routes. So that way there, you're not running into each other. Okay. So you're able to pass these things off and able to avoid the traffic. That's why you level off there. So if Mac Jones recognizes pre-snap that they're in lock and level and that they have the man coverage locked, then he's going to see that Richard Sherman on the inside corner against number 3 inside, is out leveraged on the play.
Okay.
So Jakobi Meyers is going to have an outside breaking route. See how he breaks
on the
outside
bottom,
at
yeah,
the bottom
right
of the
there.
screen?
Yep.
And he's wide open. So, yeah, there's pressure in Mac Jones's face, and Tyrone absolutely kills him in the pocket for a sack. But if he's able to recognize pre-snap that Jacoby's going to be open because of the leverage, then he can beat the pressure with a quick release. So this play is open. He has time to make this throw because it's a stunt. It's not a straight up rush. So that takes some time to have that stunt work out. And so if he sees pre-snap based off the alignment of the corners that Richard Sherman's going to have that route and he's going to be out leveraged against the out, then he's going to be able to just beat that play with a quick release, and he's never going to take that sack.
Yeah, because even just looking here, I'm not even sure where he's looking, because where he should be looking is towards the left already, based on what you're saying. And if he's doing that, he really has two guys open.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, he's got the receiver on the outside clearly open, but he even has the guy, was that Harris?
So he has a little juke route here on the point man, which is Kendrick Bourne. I think
that's
it's
Bourne,
a whip route. Yeah, I think that's what he's
looking at.
He's looking at. And it does come open, but just not as fast as the Jacoby play. And with Jacoby, it's all about reading out leverages and understanding pre-snap. What are my options and what can I eliminate from my progression? Right? What can I know is, okay, this is not going to be open. That's going to be open. These are the types of quick pre-snap just processing, basically, and reading that Mac Jones is going to have to be able to do for this offense to really start to put things together. And he's just not doing it often enough. And
he'll get there.
That's a killer.
Yeah, and he'll get there because he have another 40 passes? I mean, his passing attempts, that's just too much. He's throwing the ball a lot, but at least the numbers were a lot better. He had the one pick. We'll talk about the mistakes overall by the team when we wrap up, but still overall, not a bad performance. And then finally, what's the last play we're looking at here?
So this last play is basically just a designed scheme touch for Jonnu Smith. It's a yak play, yards after the catch play. And these are the types of plays that the Patriots are going to have to run just to get easy yards for Mac. So it's not all on Mac to read out the defense all the time. So this is a follow concept, which basically just means that Brandon Bolden is going to run this little wheel route and he's going to take the flat defender with him. And then they're going to put Jonnu Smith right in the vacated area. And it's 12 yards.
They should have a ton of plays like that. Ton of them.
Yeah, so these types of follow concepts, I've been clamoring for RPOs. I don't know if they're going to get into that this year. That might more be a year two Mac Jones type of thing. But these are the types of plays on first down that they should be running to just get easy yards for the quarterback. So it's not all on him to have the perfect read every single time. So this is the Patriots offense now, right? This is how they're going to have to win games. These short and intermediate throws, the yak plays underneath the defense, the Mac Jones processing, and ultimately, it's a lot to put on a rookie quarterback. They're basically asking him to be Tom Brady. And it's a lot to put on a rookie quarterback. But the reason why the Patriots drafted Mac Jones was as much about the mental as it was the physical. And his strength as a player is going to have to be the mental game. He's going to have to be really, really sharp mentally and one step ahead mentally, because he's not going to have the Justin Fields cannon. He's not going to have the legs of Trey Lance. He's not going to have the bombs of Zach Wilson. He's not going to have that kind of arm talent. He's not going to have that kind of mobility. So he's going to have to win with mental acumen, with just being sharp and being precise and efficient. And those are the types of plays that they're going to need him to hit.
And it doesn't help him when the team has 8 rushes, statistically 8 rushes for -1 yards. I mean, that's just, and Damien Harris was 4 for -4. Yeah. Now, what happened to Damien Harris? Because was it, he's banged up a little bit, we're just not even going to run the ball now, and we're going to, or, I mean, that can't happen. I mean, they weren't down 20 points. What's this 8 from -1 on the rushing? What was that strategy?
It can't happen again because this team can't win like that. But ultimately, when I look at this, I also point, and maybe sometimes I get a little bit too caught up in the scheme stuff, right? But really, what I see happening is man on man, hat on a hat. They're losing a lot of blocks, and with the running game for most teams, it's it's blocking, right? Like the running, we talk about this all the time with the analytics guys, right? That running backs don't matter because ultimately it's all about the scheme in the run game. And if you, in the blocking in the run game, if you get good blocking by your offensive line, then your backs are going to perform, whether it's Damien Harris out there or Ramondre Stevenson or JJ Taylor or whoever the Patriots put on in the backfield. If they block it up, they're going to get production out of their run game. So problem number one is clearly the blocking. Problem number two that they're running into is that they're trying to be an under center running team without a mobile quarterback. And if you don't have a mobile quarterback, every single run play is 10 on 11, right? You're playing a man short every single time because the quarterback doesn't account for anybody. Yeah. So the defense has an advantage. Yes. They have the extra numbers. So that points back to blocking. If you're going to be a good running team with the numbers like that, you have to be a dominant run blocking team because you're going to always be a man short. No matter what the offense does, they're always going to be a man short. So if you're going to be a man short and you're not going to have a mobile quarterback, then being a 12 or 21 personnel under center smash mouth football team takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to be productive like that from the blockers, and the blockers have to be perfect in order for it to work. So,
and it doesn't help that Trent Brown isn't out there.
Right. So if their blocking doesn't catch up and their blocking doesn't improve considerably, then they're going to have to run the ball from spread formations. They're going to have to spread the defense out and try to get into more of a sub-package running game where maybe the defense only has 6 guys in the box versus 8 guys in the box, and you can even the numbers up a little bit more and soften up the middle of that defense a little bit more to run the football productively. So
you think that's what they've done is they have given up, without Trent Brown at least, until he gets back into the lineup, we're not going to be able to run the ball successfully against really elite run defensive teams, which is what the 100%. Bucs are.
100%. I think that they gave up on Sunday night 100%. And Josh McDaniels admitted in his press conference on Tuesday that they gave up running the football, that they knew that they weren't going to be productive running on the ground, and they just decided in the second half to go one-dimensional and just throw the football. So ultimately, what I look at with this team in general is a stylistic thing. They need to be a spread football team. And Mac Jones is coming from Alabama, which is a spread offense down at Bama. So they need to be a spread offense. They need to be operating from the gun. They need to spread the field, and then they're going to get their opportunities running the football by lightening the box for the defense. And that's how they're going to have to be able to run it. And that's how they're going to be able to throw it. And when it comes to the passing game, it's going to be a lot of quick passes. It's going to be a lot of short passes. So on first down, if you're throwing the football more than you're running it, well, maybe you're gaining 4 or 5 yards per pass on first down instead of 4 or 5 yards per run on first down. Yep. And it becomes an extension of the running game, essentially, is the short passing game. And the Patriots, the model is 2011. The Patriots were this offense in 2011 with Brady and Gronk and Aaron Hernandez and Wes Welker and basically no threat on the outside. Their best deep threat on that team, I believe, was a veteran, very veteran Deion Branch. And he was their best threat on the outside. That might have been the Brandon Lloyd year, but I think it was the Deion Branch year. Regardless.
Did they have Troy Brown too?
No, Troy Brown had already retired.
Oh, he had, okay.
But that was their deep threat, was those guys. Yeah. So they've won like this before, where they've been a horizontal, short, intermediate, get the ball out, spread the field type of passing game. And the spread word is key and the tempo word is key, right? If you're going to be that kind of offense, you got to be fast. Plays got to come out quickly, and you got to gas the defense by just death by 1,000 paper cuts. And that's really what they're going to have to be.
And it's a very methodical, like you said, type of offense that there's a lot of work that goes into it too, because you have to be accurate all the time.
Right.
And I, as a Jet fan, I remember those teams, and I remember being so furious over they don't have anybody to beat you deep. They're going to throw the ball 5 yards every play. How can you not stop it?
Yeah.
You know, it just drove you crazy as an opponent. Like, how could you know it's coming? How do you not? They're not fast. They're not going to get you over the top. How do you not stop it?
Right. So in 2011, I looked this up because a lot of people, I think, are caught up in air yards right now with Mac Jones. He doesn't throw the ball down the field. They're not asking him to do much. He has only 4 completions of 20 plus yards on the whole season right now. And they look at all these other players, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, even some of the other rookies that are pushing the ball down the field a ton. And they say, A, Mac's not that impressive because he hasn't done anything that impressive. And B, this is an easy offense to defend. And I look at that 2011 season, and Mac Jones's air yards per attempt right now is 7.8. Tom Brady's air yards per attempt in 2011 was 8.4. So we're not that far off, right? We're half a yard per attempt off. So in 2011, the Patriots broke records. They had one of the best offenses in NFL history. Yeah. Brady threw for over 5,000 yards. They made the Super Bowl. They lost to the Giants the second time in the Super Bowl, but they made the Super Bowl again, and they were the best offense in the entire NFL in 2011 with Tom Brady throwing the ball 8.4 air yards per attempt. Yeah. So this offense has worked. They have a history of it. In that offense, they were 2 tight end. In this offense, they're going to be 2 tight ends. So this is not a departure from what Patriots teams of the past have been.
Well, the difference is you have a completely different fan base. You know, there's a lot of the new, fans that might have been around for the past 5 or 10 years, maybe just after that even, who have never seen this type of offense be successful. They and that's a great, especially on social media. Most of the people on social media, they're the ones who have never seen that team.
Yeah, so not to make you feel bad about the age thing right now, but in 2011 I was 18.
Oh,
and so I was just old enough to understand what they were doing. You know what I mean? Okay. Like I could really contextualize it and understand from a schematic perspective what type of offense they were at that point in time in my life from watching football for the first 17 years of my life. By age 18, I was able to kind of figure out the X's and O's a little bit. Yeah. And I agree with you 100% that on top of the fact that a lot of fans nowadays are fantasy football driven. So they want guys that are putting up numbers for fantasy football purposes. Yep. And number 2, very heavily, and I think in a lot of ways, I love the analytics. In my film review, there's a bunch of analytics in there. Passes by distance, passes by time to throw, kept clean versus pressured. A lot of analytics in that piece. But I think a lot of people in the analytics community are pumping air yards as this stat that equals good quarterback play. The guys that throw the ball down the field are the best quarterbacks. And when you actually make the charts and you actually see, here are the guys that lead the league in air yards versus, let's say, passer rating or QBR or whatever efficiency metric you want to, there's no correlation. There's zero correlation. You have Trevor Lawrence, who's one of the throwing the ball down the field pretty much more than anybody, is all the way up here on the chart in air yards, and then he's all the way down here in passer rating.
That's right.
So there's no correlation whatsoever from a quarterback being good equals ADOT or throwing the football down the field. It doesn't work that way. And when you look at Mac Jones and where he ranks in average depth of target right now, he's right around Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert. They're all right in this 6.8 to 7.6 range. And those guys are in MVP conversations for a lot of people. Sure. So the air yards thing is getting out of hand.
Well, it's their new stat. It's their new toy. Right. It's like in baseball when they talk about like how fast a home run gets. I don't even know what those stats in golf. It's like the apex of. It's like why are these stats useful? I don't even know what they're useful for. And that's a stat that is just not useful. It's just a stat. That's all it is.
It's just it's a fun new.
That's all it is.
It's sexy stat, right?
Doesn't have an impact.
The argument that I mentioned earlier is obviously that the further the ball, the further that you're pushing the ball down the field, the harder the throw, right? So that's the argument, is that the guys that are actually pushing the ball down the field consistently are attempting harder throws. Yes. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best way to do things. Mm-hmm. Why would harder be better? Easier is better. And the Patriots and Tom Brady alike as well, he has been labeled a dink and dunk quarterback for years by a lot of his haters, right? A lot of his detractors on the outside have always said that what Tom Brady does isn't all that impressive, right? It's all a bunch of short and intermediate throws. And I feel like Mac Jones is already falling into the same narrative.
He'll take that unimpressive stat, Mac Jones. Yeah, no question. Yes. That's why when I was doing a fantasy football show earlier in this year, and I was thinking about which, dynasty league, which rookies to take. And I even said, what I said about Mac Jones was, I really like Mac Jones and believes he could end up as the best quarterback of this draft class. I really believe that. Yeah. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But I don't like him as a fantasy quarterback. So that doesn't mean that I don't think he's going to succeed in the NFL. It just means I just don't think he's going to be a valuable fantasy quarterback. And that's right there, the main difference, fantasy and real football.
Yeah, and I understand that people are sitting here saying, Evan, you're complimenting Mac Jones a lot, and the Patriots are 1-3. So let's pump the brakes a little bit.
This is a rebuilding team. Come on.
Yeah, but then you look at if you look at Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields, those three quarterbacks. Let's take Trevor Lawrence out of it because he was going 1-1 for 2 years, right? He was the number 1 overall pick for how many, basically since he got to Clemson.
After winning a national championship as a freshman, yes.
Yeah, he was going to be the number 1 pick. So taking Trevor Lawrence out of it, if the Patriots drafted Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, or Justin Fields instead of Mac Jones, they would be in big, big trouble because those guys don't see the short and intermediate routes the way that Mac Jones does. Yep. Those guys are much better downfield throwers. They're much better athletes. They have a lot more arm talent. They have a lot more physical tools than Mac Jones, but they don't process things and they don't throw accurately, consistently to the short and intermediate areas like Mac Jones does. And that's why the Patriots didn't trade up for Justin Fields. That's why the Patriots weren't concerned about Zach Wilson or Trey Lance in this draft, is because they weren't the right fits for them schematically. Exactly.
Before I let you go, the bottom line, though, is that they're not also going to win. It's not all Mac Jones. It's about the rest of the team. And the rest of the team, this is not a Bill Belichick winning team right now. They just don't have the players that, there are still some good players, don't get me wrong, on the team and some difference-making players. But what used to make the Patriots great were the fringe players. The 53rd guy in the roster, the guy in the practice squad that comes in and plays a couple of games. Those guys are not doing anything. Those guys are making mistakes. A lot of guys that they count on for a specific number of snaps are making silly mistakes. And then and we talked about the running back situation, and all right, they finally give Taylor an opportunity, and then he fumbles the ball away. So it's just too many mistakes.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting that. The unforced errors right now, this team, because they no longer have Tom Brady, this team doesn't have the margin for error that they used to have. So when you have a JJ Taylor fumble, Matthew Slater gets called for a special teams penalty that wipes out a fumble by the Bucs. That would have been a huge, huge play in this game. So 2 plays there. JJ Taylor fumbles on, I think it was like the Bucs 35-yard line. So the Patriots are in field goal range already. So they have points in their back pocket, and JJ Taylor fumbles it. So there's points off the board. You lose the game 19-17. I mean, there you go, right? Then Matthew Slater doesn't get back in bounds after getting pushed out of bounds as a gunner on a punt. The punt returner ends up fumbling at around, again, the Tampa 35-yard line. And the Patriots recover the fumble, but the fumble gets wiped out because Matthew Slater gets called for a penalty. You look at that play. Then you also look before the half and at the end of the game, Bill Belichick makes 2 conservative 4th down decisions. Before the half, they decide to punt on 4th and 3 or 4th and 2 from about the Tampa Bay 40-yard line, a mathematically go for it situation. And Belichick decides to play the field position game, punts the ball back to Tom Brady. Tom Brady gets a field goal before halftime. And it was just
a big swing. That's a 6-point swing.
Right. Then when you look at the end of the game, they decided to attempt a 56-yard field goal in a rainstorm instead of going for it on 4th and 3. So when you start to add up these, I mean, look, the JJ Taylor fumble is not necessarily an unforced error because he got tackled and the helmet of the defender hit the ball and it was
those things
out.
happen.
So that's
the other team is playing as well.
Yeah. So that's a forced error. But these uncharacteristic Patriot-like mistakes, fumbles, inopportune penalties, conservative decision making on fourth down. The Patriots don't have the luxury to play like that. They just don't have the luxury to play like that. So if you cut down on 2 or 3, if JJ Taylor doesn't fumble, if Matthew Slater doesn't get called for a penalty, if Belichick decides to go for it before the half and they get points there instead of Brady getting points there, these are the little things that can swing games. And the Patriots right now are doing too many things to lose football games. Because when you look at their offense and you look at their defense, on the whole, they've put some good tape out there. Like they really have.
Yes, they could have beat half the teams in the league on Sunday night.
Yeah, especially on defense, they've put some good tape out on the field. But they're making these situational errors that are really costing them. And unfortunately, that's what losing football teams do. Right? Bad football teams don't necessarily, it's not about personnel. It's not about scheme. A lot of the times it comes down to who makes fewer mistakes. And the Patriots for 20 years were the team that always made fewer mistakes. They always won the turnover margin. They always won the penalty margin. They always made the right decisions in fourth down situations. And they always did all the right things and played a very, very clean game. And right now, they just aren't doing that.
Do you recall, because I recall early in Belichick's career, he seemed to me to be a little bit more conservative.
Yes.
Then, like, if it's fourth down at the 2-yard line or the 1-yard line, I'm going to kick the field goal, and all that kind of stuff. But then at some point when they started to win and they won a championship, then it was I'm Johnny roll the dice. I'm just gonna use. All of a sudden he just went completely 180 and became just this guy that felt that confident in his team and Tom Brady that, hey, even if I don't make it, we're that good. We could still win the football game. Now it's almost like, hey, we're kind of rebuilding. I have a young quarterback again. I'm going to kind of go back to that same strategy that I used back then, or at least that's what it looks like.
Yeah, so 2 things to that. The first thing is that Belichick, I asked him a few years ago about analytics and how much stock he puts into win probability models and stuff like that when making decisions on fourth down. And he scoffed at me pretty good, right? He gave me a typical Belichick answer. He said that the Patriots use analytics less than 0% of the time.
Okay.
Less than 0. So not at all. And so then my follow-up question to him was, okay, well, if you don't use the analytics to make these decisions, how do you make the decisions, right? And he said that it was a situational analysis based off the information that was pertinent at the time. So his big problem with analytics is that the win probability models are based off of things that have happened in the past, right? Yes. So he's saying to himself, what does it matter what a team 5 years ago did in this exact situation when Tom Brady's on the other side? It's a pouring rainstorm. My rookie quarterback is out here on a Sunday night primetime game. None of this like what happened a week ago doesn't matter. What happening right now is what matters. So he looks at it like that. And starting in about 2000, I would say even towards the end of Brady's career here, in like 2018-19, he became ultra conservative with his decision making on fourth down. The most conservative fourth down decision maker in the NFL over the last couple of years is Bill Belichick. And the reason being is that he right now has more confidence in his all-pro punter and in his defense than he does his offense. Yeah. So he looks at it as kicking that field goal. Nick Folk has been one of the best players on the team for the last 2 years. Punting before the halftime, Jake Bailey has been one of the best players on the team for the last 2 years. He went to his strengths. He went to his best players. Instead of counting on the rookie quarterback, he relied on his all-pro punter and a kicker that drilled 2 50-plus yard field goals to win the game in 2020 and he was on a streak until that kick of 30-something plus field goals in a row. It's a franchise record.
And almost made it.
Yeah, and doinked it. Right. So he is now calling or making those decisions based off the fact that his defense and his special teams are the strength of his team and not his offense. And when they got into the middle of the Brady years, like from 06, 07 to maybe 2016, 2017, they had Brady. So every 4th and 2 from the 40-yard line, it's like, Screw it. Let's just let Tom pick it up, right? Like that it was that automatic. So that is Belichick looks at it as a case study. Each individual decision is a case study on the here and now. What's working best for me right now? What can I count on right now? And he just didn't feel confident enough in Mac. And that's not necessarily an indictment on Mac. He's a rookie.
And again, it'll take a few years. And if same characters are in place and the Patriots start winning and they're a playoff team and maybe even a Super Bowl contender, then we're going to see the riverboat gambler again. But it's early. So, and I got no problem with his strategies. He's one of the best, if not the greatest head coach of all time. So, you can be critical, obviously, but then you also have to check. See, I get so frustrated sometimes when I hear people get almost too critical about people like Belichick. It's like, who are you? I mean, this guy's won, I don't know, countless Super Bowls, considered one of the greatest coaches, and who are you?
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't mind, fair criticism, second guessing, whatever you want to call it. But because that's part of what we do for a living. I'm okay with that. But sometimes I just think some people go a little bit overboard with their criticism. And that's what you get nowadays with social media, though.
So the first thing that I always do, and I did this when Tom Brady was the quarterback too, and I'd watch Brady tape and he'd make a decision or make a throw that I was like, what is he doing here? Right.
Yes.
And I kind of scratched my head. I do the same thing with Belichick, and that is the first question I ask myself is why? Why did they do this? Because Bill Belichick knows a lot more about football than I do. So there's probably a pretty good reason why he did it. And if I can't come up with the why, if I with the fourth down decisions, I just came up with the why. The why is because he trusts his kickers and he trusts more than he trusts his offense. And I can buy that. So that's the why. But if I can't come up with a why, then that's when I allow myself to second guess a little bit and be a little bit more critical. Like in the first couple games of the season, I couldn't figure out for the life of me what they were doing on offense, right? It made no sense what they were doing with the type of quarterback that they had. Then they come into week 4 against Tampa Bay and they change their entire approach for the most part. And they get into what I'm seeing as the best course of action. So now you understand the why. So with the Patriots, they usually have a darn good reason as to why they're doing what they're doing.
Yep. Well, Evan, great job as always. Appreciate the breakdown of the film. That was a new concept that I think we're going to keep working with the rest of the season. And next week, it's Houston. And look, they are a completely different team without Tyrod Taylor because they are a competitive team with Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
I think Mills has a future in the NFL, maybe as a backup. He might get a chance to start. He hasn't been as bad. I even saw him in the preseason. I was pretty impressed considering, he wasn't a top pick, but not around that team. The Patriots are a 9-point favorite, which they're not going to be a 9-point favorite over anybody the rest of the season. But this is still one of those games that you kind of want to have. Let's just get it over by halftime.
Yeah, so I'm kind of expecting this game to look a lot like the Week 2 game against the Jets. I'm cautiously optimistic that Mac will put on a show against the Texans, but I'm more leaning towards this game being about the defense, probably picking off Davis Mills a couple of times and being able to win it that way. Basically, exactly how they beat the Jets, right? The Mac Jones really did not do anything particularly great. That tape was probably his worst. Maybe, I don't know. The New Orleans tape was pretty bad too. But that tape was probably the worst in terms of just being gun shy with throwing the football, pushing it down the field at all. And all the excuses from the Mac stands here in New England was that, well, he didn't need to, right? Because the Jets gave him the game. So there was no reason for him to take any risks. Yeah. So I would like to say that the offense found something on Sunday night against Tampa and is going to be able to put on a show against Houston like the Bills just did against the Texans. But I more lean towards Davis Mills looking like Zach Wilson did in that Week 2 game, and the Patriots winning this game, 27-3 on the back of 4 picks.
An ugly game. Yes.
Yeah.
And who's after Houston?
Coming home for Dallas, which will be a really interesting game.
Yeah.
For obviously a lot of reasons from just the storyline perspective with those two teams, but really Dallas is not Tampa, right? They're not as good as Tampa is, and Dak is not as good as Brady is. But Tampa is the A team. Dallas is a B plus team,
Sure,
right? So if they
absolutely.
beat Dallas, then that's a really good step in the right direction.
Yeah, because at this point in time, I think Dallas is a favorite.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the way
I
they're
would think
playing,
so. Or maybe it's like -3 Patriots
something
with
like
like
that. Yeah.
the whole. It's basically a pick 'em for Vegas or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously Patriots have to play well enough this week, and then the Cowboys play the Giants. So as long as the
Yeah.
Cowboys win that game, but anything can happen. Of course, we know that in the NFL. Henry Anderson's out for the season.
Henry Anderson tore his pec. He's out for the year. He wasn't playing a ton for the Patriots,
Yeah, we talked
but
about that. Yeah.
still a guy that was in the rotation. So they'll have to they'll probably end up splitting the reps up. I think a guy like Dietrich Wise will probably end up playing more now that Henry Anderson, similar body type, similar role in the defense. I don't expect any of the younger guys to play any more than they are. Like
Okay.
a lot of people are asking me about like a Ronnie Perkins getting some run now that their third round pick. I don't see that happening.
Too early in the season for that,
Yeah.
probably. And then finally, I know maybe we should have talked more about this earlier in the program, but just the overall reception and everything with Brady, because I don't know, it just his mannerisms that I saw, it looked to me, and you talked about this possibility last week. It looked to me he was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He didn't look like, I know he didn't throw a touchdown pass, so it wasn't like he could even, do a fist pump, but
Right.
it didn't even look like he would have done a fist pump. It just looked like he was very uncomfortable.
So the couple of things that come to mind about the Brady thing. First and foremost, I've been to a lot of games. Luckily, I've been lucky to go to a lot of games the last few years with my job. And this was the best crowd I've ever seen at Gillette Stadium. Not necessarily the loudest, not as, they've had playoff games there that have certainly been more intense crowds, I would say. But they did such a great job, the fans, of giving Brady his due, but then also rooting for the Patriots, right? And making sure that it was clear once the game started and once that opening kickoff went up in the air, then he was the enemy, right? And I wasn't 100% sure that it was going to be
Sure.
like
Yeah.
that. And I think if the game had gone another way, and it had been a Bucks blowout, then maybe you would have heard more of the Brady chants and that kind of stuff. But because the Patriots made the game competitive, the fans stayed in their lane. They kept their cool about it, and they gave him his due before the game. They gave him his due when he broke the passing yards record, and then the rest of the game, it was we're cheering on the home team, right? We're Patriots fans. So I give kudos to all the fans that were there, because there were definitely some conversations before the game of, are there going to be a bunch of people there rooting for Brady, right? Are there going to be a bunch of people rooting for the Bucks just because they're salty that Brady is not here anymore? So that was really cool. The other thing that was, I think, gave a lot of closure to the whole situation for a lot of fans was Brady saying multiple times. He said after the game with NBC in his post-game interview, and he said it at the podium later on as well, that essentially that he's a Patriot. That this stop with the Bucks is just the way that he had to go out, but he's going to be a part of the New England community. He's going to come back for games in his post-playing career and root on the Patriots. And he called it home. He said this was a homecoming, and it was great to see everybody. And it definitely felt like I wouldn't say he regrets going to Tampa now. That's too far. But it definitely felt like he missed it here.
Yeah, sure.
And
I
I
can
think
understand that.
Yeah, and I think that he won over a lot of fans back that maybe had been a little bit salty towards him for how the divorce happened. I think a lot of fans came away from this game feeling like in a much better place with Tom Brady, because he came out and said, like, when I retire, I'm retiring a Patriot. I'm coming back to the Patriots organization.
Yeah.
I'm going to, come here and sit in Robert Kraft's box for games and cheer on the Patriots. I'm going to be here for my jersey retirement. Like, all that kind of stuff came back into play. And I think there were some concerns about whether or not his relationship with Belichick was going to be so far gone that he wasn't going to do those types of things.
Yeah, overblown as usual.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
Yep.
So yeah, that was good. And again, I think that probably, I think we saw that on the field. You know, and if you feel that way, you can understand why he kind of played the way he did. It's just weird when you love the other side more.
Yeah,
because you do. He even that's what he said. He that's his team. That's his franchise. That's his home.
Yeah,
it's not easy to kind of 100%. I'm gonna kick your ass mode that he always has against every opponent, and that wasn't there on Sunday night.
Yeah, during the week, his press conference, it was on Wednesday or Thursday down in Tampa. He said, "I want to kick the Patriots' butts," and that quote got a lot of run. Then when he came here to play the game, he looked a totally different attitude, right? Like conflicted. Honestly, conflicted. And he didn't come out before the game for normally he walks on the field before the game in his suit, and he FaceTimes his son. And his kids back home, and he gets the lay of the land. He figures out where the scoreboards are and where the game clocks are. Obviously, he doesn't need to do that at Gillette Stadium. So, you know, that's, I'm sure, a big reason why he didn't do it. He also probably didn't want the media circus, you know, the pictures and all that stuff. But he didn't do that. And when he didn't do that, he has done that for every single road game for 20 years. And I said to myself, you got to be careful with this if you're Tom Brady. You can't throw off your routine too much, because then it starts to get weird and it starts to get uncomfortable. This game and his performance on Sunday night reminded me a lot of a bunch of the Super Bowls, to be honest with you. Brady's notorious for starting slow in the Super Bowl and having a bad first half. And I think he broke the streak with Tampa last year, but in his first 9 Super Bowls, they didn't score in the first quarter.
Wow.
The Patriots offense had not scored in the first quarter in any of the 9 Super Bowls.
That's
crazy.
Think
that the Bucs got a touchdown last year in the first quarter, and he broke that streak. But he always starts really, really slow in the Super Bowl. Just nerves or something, I guess. You know, I think in this game, and maybe this is what it is in the Super Bowl, just too jacked up. Right, like just too juiced, just too fired up for the game. And I think that we saw that in this game with a couple overthrows early, jittery a little bit in the pocket. So maybe just a little bit too jacked up for this one.
And then again, you throw in the rain, and then you get the conditions that are so. But it played out pretty much. Its final score kind of. I mean, the winning team played out like we thought.
Yeah.
But it was still a game that was there for the taking for the Patriots. It's nobody wants to say anything as far as what do you call it when you lose a game that you when you're a losing team and you lose a game. It's one of those
a moral victory.
A moral victory, yes.
Yeah,
that's nobody wants to deal with moral victories. Not a Bill Belichick coach team, and not in that particular situation, but. For the long haul, it's a game that you would hope that, and you believe in later on down the road, that will help this team out and a lot of these young players, including Mac Jones, and I'm sure it will. So
100%. If the Patriots rattle off if they win 8 out of 10 to finish the season and somehow sneak out into the playoffs, we're going to look back at this game in Week 4 against Tampa when they almost beat the Bucs and say, this is when they started to figure some things out, and this is when it started to turn.
All right, Evan. This time I mean it. Get out of here. I'll talk to you next week after we talk about. Yeah, we probably talk twice as long this week as because I don't think we're gonna talk for an hour next week. We better not for the Houston game, or else there's some big problems in New England.
Yeah.
So appreciate it. And again, you'll have your coverage at Patriots Press Pass over on YouTube, right?
Yes, YouTube Patriots Press Pass. And on clnsmedia.com is where you can find that film review that we were going through earlier.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Greg.